keeping with the promise I made that I would move all political videos over to this channel, the Moisky Live channel, now starting to regret calling it the Moisky Live channel, perhaps I'll find an intro for it. That might be nice. Something I can use for live streams and for this. We'll get to that later. I thought we'd start with Boris Johnson. He's ad-friendly, right? During the 2016 Brexit referendum, Boris Johnson had buses made. These buses claimed that we would pay the $350 million a week that we paid in as part of our membership to the EU, which excluded the rebate. In fact, that excluded it because otherwise we would get more a week, to the NHS. He was not, at the time, in the actual government. He was just an MP. He had just finished being Mayor of London. He was incredibly powerful. Nobody in government, and nobody from the shadow cabinet, supported Leave. This is very important, because Boris Johnson was reasonably, along with Nigel Farage, the faces of the Leave campaign. They were the vocal ones, speaking up for backbenchers and for people around the country who felt alienated and disenfranchised by the behaviour of our government, who fundamentally failed to negotiate new terms for our membership with the EU, instead conceding the remaining powers we had and agreeing to further integrate within the EU and giving up more of our sovereign powers, which I don't think anyone agrees to. Now, this claim of $350 million is quite important, because afterwards, of course, eventually Boris Johnson became Foreign Secretary. He's not in government now, but his original claim stood, with many claiming that he had misled the public, but that's not the case. He led a campaign to leave and suggested where the money should go. For this, we now have to inject somebody. We inject Marcus Ball, who crowdfunded more than £300,000 to take Boris Johnson, who is in the midst of a Tory leadership campaign, which he might lose, to Michael Gove, the Sneck of all people, for misleading the people. This has gone so far as to a court summons being raised to take Boris Johnson to have to appear in court, thereby making things incredibly complicated for a man who wants to be the Prime Minister once Theresa May leaves her job, within the next day at most. On the 29th of May, Boris was handed that summons to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court, but the High Court has now thrown out the attempt to prosecute Boris Johnson over the claims that he had lied during the referendum by saying the UK gave the EU £350 million a week. Now, what we know so far is that the High Court has not issued a statement saying why they are throwing this out. What we do know is that many are calling this a vexatious prosecution, which basically means causing or tending to cause annoyance, frustration, or worry. I guess the timing of this is quite interesting. One of the rather interesting elements of this that was covered in the news was that the original judge, the district judge, that allowed this farcical case to go forward also happens to be the wife of the former leader of the opposition in Ed Miliband. Conflict of interest much, with him being an ardent Remainer. How disgraceful is that? Something which was mentioned by Johnson's lawyers. And we must of course pay respect for a moment to Mr. Ball, who has spent the £300,000 raised and is now in, and I quote, massive debt. A man of incredible privilege, abusing his position to derail someone's attempt to be Prime Minister with a campaign against a bus for the claim that we send $350 million a week to the EU, which is a proven number. If you're about to argue from the position of the rebate, that's after we get our rebate, because we pay in a lot more without that rebate. The only positive that comes from being a member of the EU, really, is that we get some of it back as a dividend. How nice. How quaint. With this case, I'm very much interested to see if Marcus Ball has the balls to try again. No doubt he will. The support he got for the first crowdfunded campaign is quite significant, and I am very much interested to see just how far others are willing to go to try and attack those that voted Leave or campaigned for Leave by trumping up what could be argued to be utterly bogus reasons. I keenly await the High Court's statement and will make a video update for you on this channel once it is made public.